Hello, I'm Liam Dan, host of the NZ Herald podcast Money Talks. We're back for our 5th season with an exciting range of guests. You can listen to Money Talks at nzherald.co.nz or on your favourite podcast app. New episodes every Saturday.
You're listening to the Weekend Sport Podcast with Jason Pine from News Talk ZB.
The NBA playoffs are almost upon us. The final 2 play-in games today. Chicago Bulls, Miami Heat on as we speak, and it's a pretty tough battle between these two. Miami lead 62-60 as I can see it with 3 minutes 16 left in the third quarter. Thunder v Timberwolves from 1:30 this afternoon. The playoffs start proper tomorrow, New Zealand time. Let's bring in Dan Favale, NBA writer with Bleacher Report. Thanks for joining us across New Zealand. Dan, how you doing?
I am doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks, Dan. This playing game that's on as we're speaking, Miami lead at 62-60 over Chicago. Is this as tight as you expected it would be?
Probably pretty much. I thought that the Heat would probably do a little bit better job of taking care of the ball. They've also missed a lot of shots in the restricted area over their past 2 games, and so their offense has looked, even rougher than it normally does. But I think both these teams they're both very flawed teams, and so I think you would expect this to be a close one, almost through and through, even though Miami did get out to a 14-point lead at one point.
All right, Thunder Timberwolves later on from 1:30. Who you got in that one?
I lean the Thunder right now. The Timberwolves just seem so banged up. Anthony Edwards did not look right in the game they lost to the Lakers. We don't know what's really going on with Rudy Gobert's back. They are missing Jaden McDaniels, and I think that OKC's drive offense is going to end up being too much for them. And they are, Anthony Edwards, even at his peak, he can be tough to defend. But between Lou Dort, Jalen Williams, and just the frenetic energy that OKC really plays with on the defensive end, I think that's a game, even though they're the more inexperienced team technically, that they should be able to pull out under the circumstances.
What have you made of Josh Giddey? He's from our neighbours Australia, just a 20-year-old kid playing for OKC. Is he turning heads over your side of the world?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he was not someone that I was too high on after his rookie season, but credit to him for maybe not reinventing himself on offense, but just progressing a lot. He's more confident in his standstill jumper, in getting to the basket, putting shots up there, and I think he's learned really well how to play off Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and others in that OKC offense. And so I've been very impressed with what I've seen with him on offense, and just his size on defense and rebounding is always super useful as well.
All right, Dan, I enjoyed the title of your piece on Bleacher Report called Why Your Favourite NBA Playoff Team Won't Win a Championship, which I thought was a very unique way of going about things. Can we start in the East? Milwaukee against the play-in winner of this game. Nets, 76ers, Hawks, Celtics, Knicks, Cavaliers. I guess the seedings tell us quite a bit about where the respective hopes of these teams lie. But what are you seeing happening in the East? Can you predict what might happen as we get towards the pointy end of the playoffs in the East for starters?
Yeah, I think the first round, there don't seem to be too many compelling series to me. I think Boston, clear advantage over Atlanta. Milwaukee's going to have a clear advantage over Miami or Chicago. And then even just the Nets, they're interesting with all the wings that they have, but post-KD and Kyrie trade, they don't really stack up well against the Sixers. And so the matchup to watch there in the first round is really just Cavs-Knicks. Julius Randle is going to try and play in game 1. We know what the Cavs can do with their top 4 players. Karis LeVert's been stand out at the 3 for them as well. And so it really does feel like when you start to go through the individual matchups that the Knicks might struggle to both defend and even score inside against that Cleveland defense. And so that's the series that I just have circled is whatever teams comes out of that, they're going to have a real chance at maybe getting to the conference finals depending on how they match up with Milwaukee. And if you're, the winner of that, the Milwaukee series that you would expect the Bucks to win. So that's the most compelling first-round matchup. But I think when you're looking at the overarching playoff picture, to me, as good as Boston and Philly have even been, Milwaukee remains the clear favorites coming out of that conference.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing with these play-in games. I mean, you want to be in the playoffs rather than not in them. But the team that does advance to take on Milwaukee out of the Bulls and the Heat, they're going to be such huge underdogs, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think some people believe that the Heat, between Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and even Caleb Martin, that they can do some things defensively to slow down the Milwaukee's offense, but I just don't see it anymore. Jimmy Butler's great at attacking the basket, but Bam Adebayo sort of waxes and wanes on the offensive end with his regression, and between Drew Holiday being there and being able to chase around either Tyler Hero or Jimmy Butler, you're able to at least not neutralize, but put up a fight against one of Miami's biggest half-court threats. And so I don't really think either team's a great matchup for Milwaukee. Maybe that's a series that lasts 5 games, but if it goes longer than that, I would be fairly surprised.
All right, and I want to get to the West, but are the Bucks the favourites to win the whole thing?
I think they probably deserve to be at this point. The top of the West is just not as strong as it was in years past, and the Denver Nuggets just did not look right for like the last 4 or 6 weeks of the season. There's definitely a case to be made for Boston. My concern with them, though, is that there's just a lot of jump shot variability baked into their offense. They don't generate a ton of rim pressure or get to the foul line a bunch, and so there are going to be nights, and we saw it in the finals against the Warriors last year, where when you are that dependent on jumpers without necessarily having these counters within your offense, you're susceptible to going through these wild offensive swings. And I still think, despite how good they are, that they have those inconsistencies ingrained into them.
Okay, let's get to the West. The Nuggets against the winner of the Thunder Timberwolves play-in game later today. Grizzlies, Lakers, Kings, Golden State, Suns, Clippers. What's your assessment of what's going to happen in the West?
I would expect Denver to beat who's they're going to face in the Minnesota or OKC in round 1. Even though I do think the Thunder can make that series fairly interesting if they get there. Grizzlies Lakers is tough to predict. I do still favor the Grizzlies a little bit, even though they're not going to have Steven Adams or Brandon Clark, just because their half-court offense did improve following the Luke Kennard acquisition at the trade deadline. And just with the Lakers, their rotations just always seem weird, and we've watched them play games, even when they've had both LeBron, AD, and even a third and D'Lo available, where they just play down to the level of opponents that look inferior on paper. And so I could see them upsetting Memphis, but I think the Grizzlies have to be a clear favorite there. 3-6 is tough because I'm a big believer in the Kings. I ultimately just think, though, when you look at Golden State's defensive potential, now that Andrew Wiggins is back, now that you have Gary Payton II, both Kevon Looney and Draymond Green are still there, they're better built to blow up Sacramento's offense than vice versa. And then the 4-5 matchup, I want it to be super interesting, but everyone's guess is, and I think he basically alluded to this, that Paul George is not going to return before a potential second-round matchup, and you just run out of bodies to defend the Suns if you're the Clippers then, because Paul George should be on Booker so that Kawhi can be on Durant, and now Kawhi's going to have to choose between Durant or Booker, and you don't really have another top-tier wing defender to go after who's ever left over. And then that combined with how slippery the Clippers offense has looked at points when you start playing with only one of their stars. They have a bunch of different options, I would categorize it as, when you look at their roster, but they're not really teaming with solutions to the problems that await them with the Suns. And so that's actually a series that I expect to be over pretty quickly in favor of Phoenix.
The Sacramento Kings, I believe this is their first time in the NBA playoffs for over a decade and a half. Can you just give us a brief assessment of what's happened at Sacramento that's allowed that this season?
Yeah, I mean, you have to credit them putting Domantas Sabonis and Fox on the court together and then just surrounding them with a bunch of shooting. And it has come at the expense of their defense at points, but they are just, a whirling dervish when you watch them. It doesn't matter. They can run the floor or they'll operate really quickly in the half court. They have guys like Keegan Murray, Harrison Barnes, Malik Monk, even De'Aaron Fox, who are willing to move off the ball right now around Sabonis, and they've become incredibly tough to stop, especially, the Kevin Huerter acquisition ended up being really huge for them as well. They are just so fast and precise, and they just don't stop coming at you on the offensive end, and they are able to break down even the toughest defenses, which I think is why they do have more of a fighting chance against Golden State than a lot of people are giving them.
All right, Milwaukee in the East probably. Who comes through in the West for you, Dan?
Denver was my pick before the season, for most of the season. I kind of want to lean with them as well, just because they've been the most consistent team technically of the bunch. But I don't know how you look at Phoenix at this point and see their top-end talent in Booker, Durant, CP3, and Ayton, and almost not pick them. So I think it's one of those two teams, and this might be recency bias, but I lean a little bit towards Phoenix because of how concerning Denver's close to the season really looks for me.
Dan, it's been great to get your analysis. Thanks for joining us across New Zealand with your incisive thoughts there on the NBA playoffs. That is Dan Favale. You can read him at bleacherreport.com.
For more from Weekend Sport with Jason Pine, listen live to News Talk ZB weekends from midday or follow the podcast on iHeartRadio.
Hello, I'm Liam Dan, Business Editor-at-Large for the New Zealand Herald, and I'm back with another season of my podcast, Money Talks. In this series, we're not going to tell you how to get rich. We're not going to try and pick the next interest rate move. Instead, I'll be talking to some interesting New Zealanders about how money has shaped their lives and what they've learned about it through the years. Join us every Saturday for a new chat with an exciting range of guests from the world of business, politics and entertainment. You can find Money Talks with me, Liam Dan, wherever you get your podcasts.